What's up, everybody? Today I'd like to go through your E blues scale. This is concert D, and I want to go through this scale. It seems pretty easy enough, but it can be deceptively tricky because we're back to magic altissimo fingering number 1, and that can cause you some issues with either cracking that note to play G, or overshooting it, or getting the multiphonic out when you don't want to, which you probably want to anyway. I mean, it's kind of an added benefit, but we should be in control of all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to show you some ways around that, at least in the first altissimo octave, and then up to the D, which is my range, instead of like an E, because I don't have that one. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is basically show you the most what would be traditional way of playing it. Once we get to our B natural, then we go to our palm D, go to our palm E, and then to our front key in order to play G, and then from there probably go to 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, or the vented D as I like to call it, in order to play A. And then keeping that down, add the D, the palm D, in order to play B flat. And here's where things get a little funny, because you would want to add the E flat key in order to play B natural to that B flat fingering. And what's going to happen is that note is going to want to push sharp, where you've sped up the air enough to where it's wanting to ride high. So in that case, you can lip it, but you really, if you're playing it too fast, then it's just going to come out a bit high. But assuming we use that B natural, and then from there we go to our D, which I play with the front key, and then to E, which I mentioned this before about E, you can play with either 4, 5, or 6. In this case, I would play it with just a 4, and if you remember from our previous lesson, it lowers the bis key, which is the actual fingering, but it is extraordinarily impractical to play that with the left hand. So just using any one, or a combination, or all of them, in order to play that E to get the bis key to close down. So sounds something like this. Once we get to that B, so something like that. Now, if you've listened to that, you notice two things. Sorry about this chair. You notice two things. The G had that multiphonic that was on it, which is a nice device you can use if that's how you want to do that. And the B natural was a bit a little weird. So I usually approach this scale differently. So the way I usually do it is, once I get to the E on the palm keys, I go to my favorite G, which is 1, with magic altissimo fingering number 3, the high F sharp key. So something like that. I'll show you another way that you can do that. So once we get to that G with the 1 and the high F sharp key, that sets us up very nicely for our vented G sharp fingering in order to play A. If you remember back from the previous lesson, vented means first finger up, so it's just like G sharp with the first finger up in order to play A. That's a very smooth transition from your 1 and high F sharp in order to play G. So just from this position, bang, to this position, and then from this A, B flat, I would go to adding the D key, and then from there, so we have 2, 3, G sharp, and the D key, and then to play B natural, I would go to the B natural that I've been showing you before, which is C, and the E flat key, and then from there, this puts us in a pretty good position to get to the D, bang, which I play with the front key, and then to E, I would use the 4 or the 5 key. So that sounds like this, and looks like this. Pretty easy stuff. So there's another way that you can negotiate around that front G to go up to the E. So once we get to our palm D, I'm going to show you something pretty cool afterwards too. Once we get to this palm D, we go to our front E, and as you can see, we already have our front key down. So we go from our front E, bang, right to our G using the front key. It's a little more stable because it is an inherent scoop I talked about scoops before. Scooping into that G makes it come out a little easier and with a little more stability instead of just nailing it right on. So we can go from there, and then if we're in this position, then we can go to either the other A, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which is the vented D, or we can go to our vented G sharp, 2, 3, and the G sharp key, and then we can play the scale the rest of that way up. But what I want to show you now is another way of getting off of this D key here. So I talked about this barely, just a little tiny bit before, but an alternate fingering for this palm D is your flute F sharp. So if you're a flute player, you know what that means. If not, it's 1, 2, 3, and 6. So this is the way you play F sharp on flute. So you overblow that and you get your palm D. So it sets us up for a different kind of timbre going into the altissimo range. Now, and amendment to that fingering is you don't necessarily have to have the first finger up. So if you remember back to our, I think it's our F blues scale, you can play A flat with 2, 3, and the 6 key. So if you underblow that A flat, you get that D. Right? So having this first finger up puts us in a nice position to get to our front E if we're going from that D. Scale would sound like this. So something like that. And then once we get to that front E, then you can take it however you want with the ways that I just showed you in order to get to that E. So have fun with that. I want to show you some alternate fingerings for E. I slightly touched on this earlier in the scale. It's one of the 7, or actually one of the 7 G's that I showed you. There's another G that I forgot that I left out. I hardly ever use it to play G. But at any rate, if you underblow that G, you get an E natural, and you get a nice multiphonic that goes along with it. The fingering is extraordinarily awkward. So it's your flute F sharp, 1, 2, 3, and 6. You add the high F sharp key, and then you add the low C key. So you can hear that nice multiphonic that you can get along with that. So another fingering for that E natural to get you off of the palm keys and off of the front, and this one is really bizarre, and it really wants to push sharp, and you get a really weak kind of multiphonic. You get like fifths or an octave, or there's something. It's not as, you know, juicy as the other ones, but it's flute F sharp, high F sharp key, high F sharp key, and then low B flat. So you can mess around with something like that using these alternate fingerings, keeping yourself off of the palm keys, and overblowing in that middle range of the horn really gives you a different kind of timbre and fattens up the sound a lot. I like to screw around with stuff like that, so it works, so I'm giving you this information. So let's move on. So with those other fingerings that I showed you in order to play E, you notice that we have basically what is G with this key down and a high F sharp. So if you remember back, I showed you an alternate fingering for F, which was exactly like G sharp, but you add the high F sharp key in order to play F. So it's almost like if you only play G, or only finger G, and then you add the high F sharp key, you can play E. Now that E is really going to want to push sharp. So it's almost like you can add the 6 key in order to stabilize the pitch a little bit. It starts to get a little weird and a little bit difficult to get out. So with stability, you can add that low C, or you can add that low B flat. So it's kind of a manifestation of the flute fingering with the high F sharp key. So let's assume that you play that E with the 1, 2, 3, or your flute F sharp, with the high F sharp key in order to play your E. Now it's very, very easy to go to R1 and high F sharp key in order to play G. So it's very easy to go from R1 and high F sharp key in order to play G to our flute F sharp with the high F sharp key. So we're just going back and forth with the 2, 3, and the 6 key. So here's yet another way that you can negotiate through that scale. You can try to leave off the 6 key. So you can hear how the intonation just gets a bit strange with that. So let's move on, ladies and gentlemen. Have fun with that. Mix it up. See what you like and see what you don't like. Yeah. Oh, and before I forget, I just want to throw in this other G that I talked about a little bit. It tends to run sharp, but you get such a nasty multiphonic with it, which is exactly like F, and then you just add the side C key. So you get a really nasty multiphonic with that one. So you can hear how you can have a lot of fun with that. So let's get up to the higher stuff then. So let's go up from our Altissimo E up to our D, because I don't have the E above that. So I'm going to tell you the fingers that I do first, and then I'll play it for you. So in this case, I play E, but using just the 5 key, 4 or the 5 key. In order to play G, I just use 2 and 3. In order to play A, I just use a C natural key. In order to play B flat, in this case, I would just add the side C. I talked about B flat before. You can play your split F, which is way up in the overtone series, which is 1, 3, and 4, or your 2, 3, and G sharp in order to play B flat. But in this case, I would just play the C with the side C in order to play that B flat. And then for B natural, since I'm already on this C, I just add the E flat key. So I got the C and the E flat key together in order to play B, and then to D, I would go to 2 and 3. When you're playing way up there, you got to really make sure you got your ear and your embouchure and your airspeed really dialed in, because there's a lot of overlap that can happen. Sounds like this. Piece of cake. Next time we got A coming up. That's going to be our last one, and there's quite a bit of stuff I want to show you. That's one of our frequently played in keys, which is our A, or concert B flat. That would be our A blues equivalent, or concert G, which would be our A, of course. So stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in. See ya. Bye.